What's up with it, fam? Thank you for tuning in to BYOB, where we believe the Bible is basic instruction before leaving earth. We understand the Bible is a book of principles, prophecies, promises that we must live our life by in order to walk through the purpose that God has designed for you. I'm telling you, listen, today is crazy. I got the main man, the myth, the legend. My father's in the building. Y'all need to go tell Lottie, Dottie, everybody, make sure you share, like, post. I'm talking about immediately. If you need a word from the Lord, you finna get it right now. It's going live. My daddy, Bishop Raspy Nathan II, is in the building. We honored to have my dad here on this morning. He shared with us earlier, and now he's here for the BYOB, so we can kind of walk this word through you.
Well, thank you so very much for having me, son. And listen, you that are out there who are watching live in real time, I am Lady M. No. But no, I'm so honored to be filling in for my daughter, Lady M, on today. And son, I'm so grateful just to be a part of this. And I'm so proud of you and the work you're doing. And Impact DFW, you are truly a disruptor, and you are shifting what church looks like. You are changing church culture. And I often say this, that you are moving in a dynamic way and not static. Wow. Anything that is dynamic is constantly fluid and moving. That which is static is stagnated. And so I'm grateful to see my legacy lived out through you, and to see you in a dynamic fashion doing what God has called you to do.
Wow. We're honored by every word that he shared, but just listen, he already killed us today, so if I'm not on my best behavior, you already know why. He didn't kill us. But Daddy, this whole month we've been talking about since we launched the church. Me and Lady M, y'all see she done dunked on me, y'all. Pray for her. But we're honored by understanding launching the ministry, like you just said, carrying the legacy for the vision that God gave you over 27 years ago.
Yes.
Now expanding here to the DFW area and how God sending people. Our overall theme for the month, we've been talking about church versus culture. And so everything we see going on in the culture, I know you even mentioned some of this on the call yesterday from the shooting that happened with Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
Some of the things that's going on that people are mentioning about the culture, and then how church is changing all the way around. Just when you say those words, church versus culture, and then picking back off the sermon that you're talking about, a disrupted church, can you kind of just give us a picture of what that looked like? How did we walk through that process?
Well, first of all, and thank you for the opportunity, I believe the distinction and the differentiation has to be made. When you talk about culture, culture is such a fluid word now, and it has a plethora of different meanings depending upon where it's stated and the context. Now, we talk about culture as it relates to where we are geographically. We know there's a certain culture in the South that's different from the culture in the North. When you talk about culture as it relates to what's happening in our world proper, then that speaks to the pulse, and that speaks to the heartbeat of our land, what people are really concerned about, the issues that are moving them. As you spoke even with Charlie Kirk, there is an undercurrent that's brewing right now, a racial undercurrent, but then, of course, a political undercurrent that feeds into the culture. And then when you talk about culture with church, now, believe it or not, that's a different dynamic altogether, too, which is twofold, because the church culture itself, again, has become greatly infiltrated by the world's culture. God just led me to write a manual called "What in the World Do You Want?" And I'm playing off that particular question because it seems as if, although we who are God's people have been delivered from bondage, we have a fascination with bondage, and we are still teetering and looking back, and some are even going back, because that culture that we came from greatly influenced us and still has a hold on us. But when you talk about culture as it relates to what you experience within a particular church or a particular marketplace endeavor, the culture then becomes the aroma or the flavor. and culture is greatly influenced by people. I tell folk all the time, Chick-fil-A, they have a certain culture, even though, you know, their food is good. But if it wasn't good, it's the culture that brings you back. And culture is different from vision. Vision gives birth to culture, but the problem is culture eats vision for breakfast if you don't make sure you control the culture. And so you can have a productive vision in your church, but if your people are polluting your culture, then your vision is ultimately going to become corrupted.
Wow, that's heavy, Daddy. Even when you just said that, as a pastor and as we lunch here, you just kind of pull some things out of me just saying that. How do you deal with that to make sure that pollution don't happen? And I know you were saying even today how you got to kind of speak to that culture and kind of realize that everybody don't fit.
Yes.
And I know sometimes it's hard to navigate that, especially when you starting in marketplace, starting in ministry. You have that mindset, all is welcome.
Yes.
But how do you maintain that culture of maintaining credibility? And I think some used to say, and I hope I don't jack this up, but you say it all the time, it's our job to be forerunners and not run as contemporaries with the culture. Because many times we try to blend in, we got t-shirts, we wearing J's and shorts, and preachers are not wearing suits. So what is that we need to be as forerunners and not just contemporary with the word?
Well, I think, again, and I hate to keep reiterating this, I think that's another fluid issue too. And it's not static, it's dynamic. And you have to be sensitive enough to know where the line is. And I think that has become the problem. There's a song that came out a few years back called Blurred Lines. And I believe there are no lines of demarcation. And now they're blurred until there is no distinction. Now, we are called to reach the world. We are called to interact with the world. We are called to literally love and befriend the world, but we're not called to be of the world. And there has to be a distinction, and there has to be some degree of separation. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that because, again, that same curiosity and fascination with the world is drawing and pulling so many people in. But to answer your initial question on how do you deal with that, it's literally something that you have to deal with sometimes on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and you have to allow that particular moment to dictate how you apply what you're going to apply as a solution. And let me give you an example. I say all the time that we don't love people equally, we love them adequately. Because one person's experience could be based upon something traumatic that they can't even help, and they're doing what they do because of what they've been through. Another person could be just rebellious. I'm going to deal with each of them differently, you know. But overall, son, you have to inspect what you expect. And as the visionary, you should be the chief culture agent of your church. And every time your people and your vision is no longer looking like you, it's because there's become some cancerous people who has infected your culture, and you have to deal with that. And that requires difficult conversations. And I think that's another problem. I talked about that in the message. We don't like to have difficult conversations. We like to assume you know. And if you don't know, I like to wait until I get too upset and be passive aggressive about it and then handle you improperly. But the problem with that is when I do that, I've given up the high road. And now I'm the villain when all I had to do was have the difficult conversation.
You mentioned that on the call, the lady that went viral.
Yes.
That's a perfect example.
Exactly. And all you had to do was have a difficult conversation.
You want to do it on stage. Now, you told us on the call, for those who don't know, you in the church culture, one of the pastors rebuked one of the praise and worship leaders in front of everybody.
Yes.
But they have said behind the scenes, long story short, it's a money issue. But come to find out, they made a post, the whole praise team left.
Yep, sure
so
did.
You don't have a team. So just how you handling people.
That's right.
And it made me realize something I have always watched you do. You have never had a problem with confrontation. And instead, whatever you don't confront, you would never conquer.
Never conquer.
So, but I always saw you do it in a caring, loving, compassionate way.
Yes.
It's not to hurt the individual,
that's right.
But correction sometimes might cause a little friction and pain.
Yes, yes.
I'm reminded when I broke my wrist that the doctor, in order to reset it, I had to go back through another pain. It felt like he was breaking again, but he was popping it back.
Talk, son. Yes.
And I feel like that's what you see in ministry, marketplace.
Yes.
Even in the home, you got spouses that don't know how to communicate. Because sometimes it's that hard conversation that get us back to where we need to be. And that's what you have always been in our life. You that hard conversation. Hey, when it's time to talk, we have a joke back home. We say it's the green room. Why they never text and say he on one. It's on purpose. You need that because the visionary is steering the ship in the direction to go.
Yes.
Sometimes when it get off course, to correct it,
yes.
it's going to be a little painful, which speak to your spiritual father or the fact that you are a spiritual father and that you cover leaders. So you're a leader that cover leaders.
Yes.
And it reminds me of 1 Corinthians 4:15 talks about, for you have not many fathers, but many instructors of the gospel.
Yes.
Can you kind of speak to that in this culture, the difference between being a father and an instructor, and that everybody now is walking around spiritual sons, jumping from one to the other. And this is a perfect example too. You know, we're gonna throw this in. My daddy wrote a killer book, The Honor Code. And if you're a spiritual father, or you're a son, or you're in business, or you're trying to manage that in your house, you need to make sure you get that, all the information to be in the link to make sure you're able to get those books. But the Honor Code kind of speak to that. So when you're talking about spiritual father, sonship, and then an instructor, what do all of those things look like? Because now it's like, it's a thing in church now to say family.
Yes.
But are we really that?
Yes. You know? Yeah. Well, what I found is we're all adapting to and adopting that cookie cutter culture that says, well, if I pastor and if I pastor long enough and I have people who show me deference, then I will make sure that I ultimately come to a place where I feel like I've earned the right to start calling you son and daughter.
Wow.
And when I start calling you son and daughter, and what they say, I start sonning you, then I start bringing myself up to a place where I'm not a spiritual father. And I believe now I even have a right to cover pastors. That's a grace, and everybody doesn't have that grace. I really believe that the reason God gave me that grace is because I was a productive, submitted, and honorable son. And I say often that if you are too big to sit under somebody, then you're too small to stand over somebody, because you need that level of covering. And that level of covering gives birth to your maturation that's necessary for you to become a coverer. But again, everybody doesn't have the grace. Now, to answer your question concerning what Paul wrote to the church at Corinth, he was speaking to an audience who understood precisely what he was referencing in that Greco-Roman culture, because in that day, a lot of the leadership, a lot of the government officials, and even a lot of the churchmen had what was called pages, just like they have in Washington now. And these pages would do their bidding. Some got perverted, and then there were others who actually just did their bidding, but it was excessive. And so Paul used that analogy, and he juxtaposed a teacher with a father. Now, in the Greek, it's pedagogos, and pedagogos literally means a boy leader. But father, padre, it literally speaks, a pater rather, it speaks to someone who has a level of maturity. It does not reference age. Now, in that culture, it referenced age. In this day and time, you don't have to be of a certain age, but you have to be of a certain sagacity, and you have to be of a certain level of stability, and you have to be able to love dynamically. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. And you've seen this, and you and your brothers and sisters have told me this, y'all being my children, that y'all get tired of people mistreating me and folk walking away from me and doing all of that. But I often say that's part of the Father's heart, because fathering is not something I have a choice to do. It is a calling that God has given me the grace to do. And in that, I think a lot of the frustration and friction, son, if you would please, is not necessarily where we've placed it, which is upon your generation, because they say the Joshua generation don't want to be submitted. Well, here's the reality. There are some rebels, but there's a lot of the Joshua generation that just don't want to be lorded over. And because a lot of those from my generation, we misinterpreted what fathering was. We thought fathering had to be done with a heavy hand. But the reality is fathering has to be displayed through loving. And you got to know how to love people enough to walk them through what they're going through, because when you don't do that, it gives birth to what I've often called, son, gallant immaturity, but then geriatric intimidation.
Wow, you got to unpack that.
So So galleon and maturity. This is what I often say. Now we understand who Absalom was, and we understand his view of his father's kingdom was perverted. But here is what God said to me. He said Absalom didn't have wanting the kingdom wrong. It was how he wanted it that was wrong. Because had he waited, it was his anyway. And so the problem with many sons is that some of them are trying to move with haste before their time, but some of their moving outside of timing is because of their fathers. Because the father is displaying greatness in front of the son, but don't expect the son to develop an appetite for greatness. Yeah, you know. But the galleon in maturity comes because they start resisting, rebelling, and start trying to make their own platforms. And some even go, if not, they start frustrating the flow and the grace of the oil within the house. Here's the geriatric intimidation. Because when I get to a certain level as a father, I have to be so gravitated. Prime example, right now, you can't see what I see. You only see what God has shown you as the visionary of Impact DFW. I don't see Impact DFW. I see you taking my place. I see you leading the torch, giving birth to churches all over the country. Because fathers see further and sons go further. The problem happens when the father sees the glimpse of the future of greatness, but he ain't in the picture. And can't handle the fact that transition sometimes requires repositioning. And intimidation sets in now because I am experiencing and I am fully aware of my lifespan and my mortality. And I feel like I'm fading when in reality, I am shifting and I'm elevating. So it takes us dealing with our ego, and it takes us swallowing pride and ultimately understanding placement. Son, there is no way, and I tell you this all the time, I don't care how great you say I am, there's no way I could do some of the stuff that you do, because that's your grace. But here is the blessing of being a submitted son. You get to do stuff I'll never be able to do, but you get to do everything I can do. That's the double portion.
That's definitely heavy. That some days, you always spark something. I can talk to my dad for hours. Y'all like eavesdropping on normal conversation.
Most definitely. Yes.
But two things that kind of pop out to me when you brought up Absalom. I feel like the conversation between the father and son that never happened.
Never happened.
Legitimate conversation when David could have told him the prophecy he received from Nathan.
Yes.
That the sword would be in the house.
Yes.
I think speaking to not only generational blessing, but generation curses
as
well. That's something that happened that your father did that the man of God spoke over. Let me bring that to the table. Let's deal with this uneasiness.
That's so good, son. That's so good.
Kind of clean up back to what you said earlier, the confrontation, being able to have those heavy conversations.
Yes.
I did everything perfect.
Yes.
I've been present. Let me walk you through Absalom, this and this.
Yes.
So I think sometimes the conversation haven't been had, and then that person can get something in their head, which I think is very prophetic. That's why he ended up losing his head at the end.
Yes.
Because he let his head go.
I love that.
Penetrate your head. I say this all the time. You'll see it. Once it penetrates your head, it'll produce in your heart. And then once it produces in your heart, you'll perform it in your hands. So,
Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus.
We always talk about that. And
Lord Jesus.
Said, as a man thinking in his heart, so is he. I said that last week because what he's saying is if it got in your head, it'll get in your heart. And that's what you become, what then got in your head. And I think that's what happened to Absalom.
So let me ask you this, son. So you're suggesting that the dude who comes from a lineage of head hunters, his daddy was a head chopper, and he lost his head.
He lost his head.
Lord have mercy.
In the house with the one that knock off.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. He come from a hitter.
He come from a hitter.
Yes, sir.
It'll go crazy. And then I heard this too. I ain't gonna take it just like this, but he didn't say it like this, but I'm gonna clean up a little bit. I heard this from Pastor Mike Moore. It's very powerful. He was just talking about the transition in our generation when he brought up Joshua. And I never saw it like this. I'm gonna go crazy on this, but I think it speaks to where we at in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus standing in front of 5,000, the little boy standing up with the food, he got the fish, the 2 fish and the 5 loaves. 2 things. This is what I done said before. he's not the only one with a lunch. He's the only one willing to
give up his lunch.
So he's willing to give it up. But this was crazy. He represents a different generation. But he realized what he had, he couldn't do nothing with it. So he give it to the one that can.
That's greater than him.
I think that's
Lord
the
Jesus.
father, son,
I love it.
To see, hey man, I know I'm bringing something to the table. It don't make me lesser, but this what I do have. Let me bring it because I know somebody that can make it bigger than what it is to expand it. And I remember just when me and Shauna was starting this off, I was telling about church planning. People asking me about the point. Well, what your ministry is? Or can you stand on your own?
Yeah.
And I remember having this conversation with. I was like, nah, I totally understand what God called me to do, and it don't make me lesser or greater. And I always say this. I use that reference of John the Baptist. John the Baptist didn't trip. It's somebody greater that's coming.
Yes.
It don't minimize what this is. I just know what that is. And I think that little boy that wasn't selfish, because that's what you see in the body of Christ. You being selfish. You want your 2 loaves. You want your 2 fish and your 5 loaves. I brought mine, but he was willing to give it. And then as he broke it, it's just a blessing in the break. And I'm going to preach it. I'm going to preach the blessing in the break because every time he broke it, blessing happened.
It multiplied.
So multiplication happens through breaking. And you talked about that earlier today. So sometimes God just will break certain things in our life. And I feel like that's what you see lacking when it comes to father son. I've seen a lot of people break up. I've seen people like, hey man, you was that close to that person. Now we don't even talk no more. And I'm saying it's so crazy because it can happen on both ends. I get full of myself. Well, I don't like how he don't talk to me like that, and then I'm in my mode, or the same thing. And then I think you said something so powerful on the call. Spiritual sons ought to have the grace and give their fathers latitude to handle you wrong.
That's right.
You handle me wrong, don't neglect that you must step my
That's right.
That's right. The conversation
and let's have a conversation. That's right.
Hey,
that's right.
This right here.
That's right.
My feeling, or just give me clarity.
That's right.
I could be moving some kind of way.
Yeah.
But I think it have to be that. If not, you sowing those seeds of discord.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna have to eat that later.
Yes. So. Yes. Yeah. So son, you know, with you saying that, let me say this, and I say this to anybody openly. Even if, and I say this about my son, even if, and Lady M, you know this, he ain't gonna do what I say. He gonna respect me and honor me while I'm saying it. But no, for the most part, seriously, he does what everything I tell him to do. But your spiritual father, the problem with this breakup culture that we're a part of, when everybody, of course, it's called the cancel culture. We cancel relationships and use them as if they're disposable. It's because it was never based upon honor.
Wow.
When it's based upon honor, it's not contractual, it's covenantal. When it's based upon honor, it's not transactional, it's honorable. And it means no matter what you do to me, I've made a resolve in my heart and I've come to a decision. I'm not breaking up with you. And I tell folk all the time, you know, they say, you still with my spiritual father, Bishop L. Lawrence Brandon. He's been my spiritual father almost 34 years. And I've had one spiritual father. And you know, I stand on that. And we communicate every Sunday morning when I send them my seed. And I tell folk when they say, you still with such and such, I said it's a spiritual decision. It has nothing to do with me. He's my spiritual father. and because of that, I let honor dictate that relationship. And if we could become honorable within our relationships, I believe it would salvage marriages, it would salvage business partnerships, it would salvage friendships, because that honor speaks to, in the Greek, I think I said this today, time, in the Hebrew, kabod, it's the weight, esteem, and the significance you place upon someone. I said this on our Zoom, son. Here is how you know you honor your spiritual father. They become the voice of God in the earth realm in your life. When you can't see your leader as God's voice, either there need to be a conversation between the two of you, you need to mature, or you need, or they are not proper for your life, or you need to move around. Because you've got to be able to trust your life and put it in their hands and believe that they won't manipulate your purpose. Now, here's the reality. I used to tell y'all all the time, you know, we had that running joke, don't give my phone number out. And I remember one time with my spiritual father, he had a new phone. He had a new phone. And so he called my son and asked for his, you know, hey, let me get your daddy's number. I can't do it. I call him for you. He said, no, this Bishop Brandon. Yes, sir. I call him for you. And so this is the thing. What I would tell you guys all the time, even in service, I tell you, listen to my voice and what I say. And what I tell y'all, if an angel of the Lord came down and told you to do something different from what I said, tell the angel, Bishop say something else. And here's the thing. I am not trying to place myself on the level with the angelic grace of being. I'm saying that even if I'm wrong, God's going to honor you because you honored me and you honored my voice. Honor says I can say something to you that doesn't make sense, and I don't have to make it make sense for you to go do it. That's honor. Yeah.
Yeah. That just reminds, scripture says, if you bring a prophet a drink of water in the name of a prophet, then say a righteous prophet, honest prophet, prophet you agree with. It just said in the name.
Yes.
So then you're entitled to the prophetic water. We speak to, just I tell people all the time my story. I just remember 2002 May. I'm driving around the city. I pull up at Timberland. Never forget it, 7th Street. Life-changing moment for me. I remember you're a preacher. I get there early. You're a preacher. I'm standing the whole time. I'm in a banana suit, some fake banana gaiters. I'm clean as a pussy. I'm glad. But I remember just standing.
Oh my God. Yes.
Hey, this is your pastor. And just fake. This is the man of God. And that moment, I knew my life would change.
Yeah.
You son O'Neal to come talk to me. I come back to the back of the office. Everything, it been history ever since. But I was telling somebody, and I think at that time, you preached 3 hours. You preached 3 hours, and he got notes. He got notebooks. He had this little green notebook that he used to have. Every word that God gave him, you going to get it that Sunday, baby. He was telling you, hey, this free social media, you can get this.
Oh my God.
I think everybody got prayed for at least twice. You went crazy. Listen, y'all, one time Bishop preached so crazy, he lay hands on everybody. Everybody praying in the spirit. Then he lay hands on himself. I told him wasn't nobody left in the field, man. Wasn't nobody left. So we didn't win in.
Oh my God.
That's the first time we lead to where I want to go.
Yeah.
First time I really come in contact with the 5-4 ministry. Yeah. Up until that point, I think took it to the nation. Only person I ever heard like prophesied to somebody. Told me God called me to preach on my first encounter, but to see somebody laying hands on the sick, people recover. I remember the young man regaining his hearing while we in service. That's right. Praying over cancer and praying for people. I remember we was at the park and demonic force right then got delivered at the park. Yeah. But I'm saying this to say this. As it relates to the 5-4 ministry gift, I believe there's an emerging of it where we're getting back to that.
Most definitely.
People getting away from using
most definitely
terminology like apostle, prophet, teacher, pastor. We've been having an apex of a pastor for a long time. I think that's because that's what people are comfortable with. And I also believe it's a trick of the enemy, but not letting you use all the tools in your toolbox. Just to think of a trick of the enemy and make you think it's only one tool when he gave you 5.
Most definitely.
He gave me the gift so I can use it. So can you kind of speak to that 5-4 ministry gift and what are we saying? And then some of the manipulation too. Some people use that as a reason to be a renegade, not to be connected to him.
Well, son, honestly, this conversation about spiritual gifts, again, has so many dynamics to it because there's so many philosophies that's out there. You have some who subscribe to the fact that each member of the Trinity gives gifts. They say the Father gives his gifts, and they're outlined in Romans 12. The Son gives his gifts, outlined in Ephesians 4, and then the Holy Spirit gives his gifts, which are outlined, of course, in 1 Corinthians 12. Here's the truth of the matter. God is one, and the 3 are one. Now, again, you can classify them like that, and that's not my fight. But I think the reason many of us got away from the gifts and literally started becoming pastor-centric is because of what I said earlier. We have westernized when we Christianized. And so this westernized culture makes the pastorate a celebrity position. And everybody wants to pastor because that's the one that has the car. That's the one that gets the house. That's the one that has the influence. And they don't understand it. It's the apostolic grace. It's the prophetic grace. It's the evangelistic grace. It's the teaching grace that literally creates these platforms for the pastor. The pastor is, in the Greek, is poimen. He's nothing more than a shepherd. And in some cases, even an elder that just oversees. But when you have just the pastor's grace, and I'm in no wise minimizing the pastor is important because the pastor cares for the sheep, and the sheep literally have a connection with the pastor that no other gift can have. However, as it relates to burgeoning and pioneering and expanding, that level of expansion has to come from an apostolic grace, that level of birthing, as it relates to the foresight and the insight, the correction, because that's something else we've gotten away from, the redirecting and the realignment that has to come from the prophet, as it relates to the foundation that's necessary for us to be able to know what we believe. To know what we stand for, that doctrinal influence that comes from the teacher, and not just being able, as we say, to quote scriptures and flip through the Bible and give topical sermons, but to have revelation downloads in real time from heaven. That's the teacher, but it's the evangelist that still has a grace to work miracles, to produce supernatural manifestations, that people would develop an appetite to want to come to Christ because of the manifestation of that particular gift. So all of them are so necessary and needed. But I think in this day and time, once again, we are so focused on intelligence. And I get it, because for years we were ignorant charismatics. And you know, I say all the time, we had to check our brain at the door. And now God has given us the ability, as Bishop Craig Oliver says, our second presiding bishop in Full Gospel, to make ourselves oily intellectuals, which means, you know, we can have it all, but we got something in our head at the same time. But here's the problem, though. Sometimes we go to an extreme and we forget the middle message. Here's where I'm going. I went the long way to say this. The middle message is not the message of the redemption of the spirit. That's salvation. It's not the message of the rapture of the church by the spirit. That's dealing with the end times. It is the middle that we no longer talk about, and that is being filled with the spirit. That used to be a mandate. That used to be something we preached, and we over preached it because we understood the necessity of people walking in that said power. And because we no longer do that, here is something else that's taken out of the church now: being spiritual. It's become so très bizarre for me to be spiritual that I may say something to the effect that when you're talking to me, hold on now, just talk real. Don't be getting all spiritual. But I am a spirit being. I'm supposed. Exactly. So because of all of that infiltration of carnality, we've suppressed the spirit of God, and ultimately we've aborted our ability to operate in the gifts. Carnal Christians. There is a such thing now. Carnal Christianity. There is cafeteria Christianity as well, because you get to decide what you want to believe and what you want to do, and what you don't want to do, you don't have to do anymore. So it's a buffet of choice. Now, let me say this something before we move to something. I want to go back because you said something powerful. You piggybacked off Mark Moore, and you talked about you understanding your grace and what you're called to do. And I echo that sentiment. I want you to see something that happened to that lad that's happening to you, because that lad knew his place, because that lad didn't mind giving up his lunch, because that lad understood it could not be as effective had he not given it up for everybody. Think about how many hands touched it. And think about, here's what Bishop Morton, our spiritual grandfather, says. We oftentimes thought Jesus gave the disciples the 12 fragments. The 12 fragments baskets came back to the boy because he the one sowed the seed. So here is what you got to think about. It multiplied and everybody touched it. He now has a part of that grace. Because he understood his place, he ultimately expanded his grace. So although you know your place, I just said earlier, you're being set up to step in my space. And because you know where you need to be at this moment, it's creating momentum for you to move further as God takes you where he wants you to go. And I think that's our problem. We don't have that laser focus that's necessary to tap into where our place is and to tap into the fact that I ain't called to everybody. I'm not called to do everything, but I'm called to somebody, and I'm called to do something. And if I just stay there, son, I made up a word called stay there. Get your lane and stay there. That just, yeah.
I love it. That's why I love when Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Man, not fit to live."
Come on.
Until you find something that
Willing to die. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Once you able to look death in the face,
talk, son.
And say, "That's me."
Talk, son.
You fit to live, because
Yeah.
you got a reason to be here.
Talk, son.
People live their whole life and never checking into that, and that's difficult. That's powerful. That I say this, especially when it comes to the gift. I look at it like a police officer.
Mhm.
I used to tell people they gave me all these tools on my belt.
Mm.
I can't wait to use them. I tell them all the time. Shout out to Bud.
I remember that.
Like a Bud going in with him with the hand. I tell them like this on the street. Anybody under 200, I'm hitting you with this hand. You ain't winning if you're under 200. Just on GP. Anybody over 200,
and he's serious. He's so serious.
I'm hitting you with the baton. And then Lord, the dunamis. Don't ever let me do it. And I say that, and even though it's coming, I say that as a believer.
Yeah.
How you gonna give me these gifts?
Wow.
Because you said the Holy Spirit,
yeah.
Jesus,
yeah,
the Father.
Yeah.
You think I ain't finna use these
yes.
gifts?
Yes.
You trying to limit me to
yes.
all the tools He gave me. My Father then gave me these gifts, and
yeah.
you gonna tell me, well, I'm only allowed to use this? No, the devil's
yeah.
like, I want to taste and touch all of these.
Yeah.
If they're a gift to me, and
yeah.
I understand it just because He gave us the gift.
Yeah.
If we don't take the time to unwrap them and get familiar with them,
son, you've been prophetic.
We'll never be able to operate it.
So let's talk about that other side of the spectrum. The antithesis of being ignorant to the gifts is wanting to have the gifts and being ignorant.
That's it. And then that ain't no him.
Come on. Talk, son. Talk.
Some of it just get collected dust, and then you send that. It's like what he's saying. And if I'm not mistaken, that in the scripture, he cast somebody in the utter darkness. But
yes. That's right.
Gave multiple ones.
That's right.
Sometimes you can see people on platforms like, man, how in the world? It's because they exercise their gift.
Yeah.
And you can easily, I say, cover somebody else's gift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I told somebody, I always try to pride myself to stay in my own lane. I don't even try to, hey, what I'm comfortable in, that's what I'm going to be at, what God called me to be at. And I feel like when you try to reach, I told you this earlier, I didn't see somebody with the counterfeit, potentially trying to do something, but what's crazy, it was working. And it always gonna work. I'm reminded of Cat Williams' first stand up. That Phantom do look like
until you get up on it.
Until you get up on it. Because it look like that from a distance. That's what you see in the ministry.
Yeah.
Apostolic grace.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's that. That is not that.
Yeah.
But when the reality, the real McCar is not there, sometimes the counterfeiter do. And so that's what I believe God is doing. He's raising up a lot of more authentic people. You saying people ministry, you saying people pop that wouldn't normally pop as it relating to ministry, and then they approach the ministry different, and then they just coming from different places. They're not following, I would say, they the John the Baptist model. He outside of the main frame, even though his dad is priest, he's still in the wood line eating honey and locust. And I believe that's the move, and that's the lane.
So when it comes to the gifts, I think there's another negative stigma we have to expose, because people, so we say people are not operating the gifts anymore. It looks as if they're not attracted to the gifts anymore. But for those who are, sometimes they're ridiculed and saying you just want to prophesy, you just want to be in a part. Well, Paul said, desire spiritual gifts. And that is a craving, and it's a coveting. Desire them. You ought to want to, because you're desiring them is you allowing yourself to be utilized as a tool in order for God to do ministry through you. But there's something else he came back and said. If you look in, I think that's, and you can proof text me, I think it's 1 Corinthians 14, when he says, now concerning spiritual gifts. I taught you guys this years ago. Of course, we know when you look at the Bible and the word is italicized, it was not a part of the original text, added for the sake of translation. So this is how the text reads. It'll mess you up. Now concerning spiritual.
Wow, this ain't flesh. Yeah, this spiritual people.
Yes. Gifts was added.
Right.
He's saying, here is the first prerequisite. You got to be spiritual. It's a spiritual gift. Right. Natural gifts can be proven through practice and repetition. This is a spiritual gift that's going to require spiritual downloads and spiritual revelation. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody asked me, I think I said that one time when I was preaching back home, I said the drip. I said, I can't even tell you how I learned how to process. I just know where it happened, but I don't know how it happened. So it just happened because you told us that some stuff won't be taught.
Gonna be caught.
Some stuff is gonna be caught. And what that means is I was in the vicinity.
That's right.
Close enough.
That's right.
Walk close enough that same oil drip. And that's
So
that connection.
I can tell you where it happened. Literally. It happened while you were driving me. It happened while you were sewing into me. It happened while I was still talking and you standing outside the door right there. Got to be at work in a couple hours, but wouldn't leave me because you didn't want me to be by myself. It happened when you would take off work and we going all over the country. It happened when you would always make sure I had everything I need and was covered when nobody else would be there. You say, I drive my daddy myself. That's where it happened. One of the greatest honors I believe that we really overlook in scripture is when they needed to find a prophet. I think this is somewhere in 2 Kings 3, something like that. They need to find a prophet to get a word. And as I paraphrase, they say, hold on, there is a prophet. His name is Elisha. But look at how they described him. He poured water on the hands of Elijah. That's a Jewish idiom that speaks to servanthood. They recognized this dude by how he served his prophet. Do you know what kind of honor you must be displaying if somebody recognizes you not by who you are, but by your service and how you've served? And here was what God said to me. He said, it's impossible to pour water on hands. That's a Jewish idiom, but it actually was a thing they did literally too, to pour water on hands and water not splash back on you. You hear me? You're going to get wet. You're going to get wet too. And so I became known in my city by the patriarchs of the city who watched me serve my pastor, who are now my contemporaries. Apostle Hamilton, of course, as you know, I call him the godfather of Pentecostalism in our city, but he saw me serving. This had to be around 1993. I walk in the door with an elder collar on. I'm just a newly ordained elder. He looks at me and said, sir, you're a bishop. Spoke it into my life. Then he watched me as I matriculated through ministry and stayed faithful and honorable. He was reminded of it and said, I told you what God's going to do.
With the elder collar.
And he came. Dr. Layton, who, as you know, is, and he said this himself, very selective about who he deals with. He made me a part of his conference and said this in front of everybody and allowed me to lead a portion of the conference on his behalf. And he said, the only reason you're here is because I've watched you remain honorable for 30 years to your pastor. Wow. And he said, you're a part of my conference from now on. From now on. Because of that.
Can you speak to that process though, Dad? I think that's what's difficult for a young minister, anybody in business, or anybody that receive a word from the Lord. Because he said elder, but from elder Mason to Bishop Mason,
it was a process. Lord have mercy.
You didn't walk out that service, right?
No, not at all.
No, it's a process.
Not at all. Well, I'm gonna tell you this, son. And if you allow me to be a preacher, you know, I go to Albuquerque to get back to Mansfield. The reality is this, you talked about it earlier, about not having transparent conversations. What got me to where I am is getting wisdom. And getting wisdom can come through a mentor. It can come through matriculation. Or my greatest schoolmaster was my mistakes. I've always been transparent with you about my mistakes. And I've told you this from day one, whether you like it or not, you're going to be a better man than me. Have I always said that? Because you are literally my do-over. I started pastoring at 24. I wasn't old enough. I was married at 19. I was too young to be married and certainly too young to be pastoring people. You understand what I'm saying? So I had to grow up. And I grew up by mistreating people. I remember one Sunday, because the deacons made me mad. And I had always been of the persuasion a preacher preach their way out of it. So I went and got the text. I went to Philippians 2. Paul said, beware the dogs. Woo! I went out there and talked about the big dog, the little dog, the little puppy that put mess everywhere. I preached and closed it, took him to the cross and all, went back to the study, pat myself on the back and said, dude, you preach. And I've only heard God talk to me like this twice. He said, sit down, let me talk to you. And you've heard this phrase for over 20 years. He said, don't you ever use my pulpit to take out a personal vendetta again. I give you a privilege to speak on my behalf to my people, and you abused it. He said, what if someone had left there today to commit suicide? That blood would be on your hands. That, and I'm just, but I feel good in the flesh. But that changed me literally, and it brought me to a place of understanding where I knew I had to grow. And so that wisdom that I received came through mistakes like that, came through me understanding that God ain't ever been trying to change people through me. He's been trying to use people to change me. the entire time. And I'm making everybody the problem but the problem. And so when I understood that level of wisdom came, and I was actually able to start enduring that process that you talked about. The process did not happen overnight, but I had a mindset to understand that if I'm ever going to get from A to Z, it's going to be a slow walk. So to the young preacher, I know you want it. I get it. You have a right to it. But the reality is nothing grows overnight but infection. Wow. And the truth be told, you don't want to swell like that. You want to grow, and you want God to take you to the mountain, and you never have to topple back down to the valley. Take your time. Let it be one day at a time. If you got one sermon, preach it and perfect it. If you got one suit, flip it and get multiple shirts to go with it. But stay in your lane. Do what you do and do it better than anybody else can do it, and endure the process. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel overlooked. You heard this in the honor code when I did an audible introduction, and you saw I was very transparent about me and my pastor. I've never left them, but there was one time when I felt like fighting them, you know, and I remember I didn't say this in the introduction, but this is what led to the temporary distance that we had that I corrected. I remember when I was just feeling like, man, this dude, he's picking on me, man. Why are you picking on me? I mean, just literally just picking on. That's what I thought. So here I am. I'm the first assistant. I'm the bus minister. Then I walk in one day, he put me over the choir. Man, I can't even sing.
What's that? I don't know what no is.
Okay, so I'm over the choir. Then I'm serious. I'm over Christian education. Okay, and so I mean, and it's crazy stuff like consecutively, one on the heels of the other. And then one day he tells me the church is going on a church trip. Okay, bet we good. You know, I get your mom together. She's ready. She's going. He said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I need your wife on the praise team, but you got to stay here." Oh yeah, but I forgot this too. I need you to go preach our 8 o'clock service, do Sunday school at 9 o'clock, and then I need you to come back and preach 11, preach Sunday night service, and then I got a funeral I need you to do on Monday.
I ain't checked your schedule. We ain't worried about your schedule. You still working, right?
So I still got a job. I still got a job.
We ain't worried about that job.
No. And so, you know, I didn't say this to him, but in my mind, man, this dude playing, man. So, and I didn't know then, watch this, son. I didn't know then that honor is a heart thing. And no matter how much I'm silent, if my head and my heart is messed up, God still can't bless me. I got to learn how to shut up. And I got to let my patience, and I have to let my posture match my performance. If you murmuring while working, you just gave him corrupted service. And that's strange fire. Exactly. So I didn't know that then. So what I did was, I said, it's time. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to have it. And you know when you're wrong, but when you're wrong, you don't care.
I'm in my feelings too.
I'm in my and so it's about 3 other pastors in there. I walk in there. I said, "Why are you playing with me?" He said, and so he said, man, and he's only had to say this to me one time, and he and I laughed about this today. He said, he said, what do you mean? I said, he said, son, I need here more work. I need you to go. And so. This is what I said. I said, yeah. Let Mason do it because Mason got to do everything. It's like the room got still. He stopped and he said, I never thought I'd have to say these words. I'm so disappointed in you that would even come out of your mouth. I saw the disgust, but most of all, the disappointment. He never had to say that to me. I'm not saying the revelation came that day, son. And I get emotional when I think about this. About 4 weeks later, something happens. You remember I'm saying he put me over everything? No, everything. And this is your church, but you put me over. Okay. 4 weeks later, he walks in and he says, son, New Zion needs a pastor. I need you to go over there. I thought he hated me. He was training me to pastor.
Putting you over everything.
The entire time. So enduring your process, there is no formula for that. But what there is a conviction for it, where you decide, I'm going to wait until my change comes. Yeah.
That's myself. I'm gonna say that's what you just speak to. I tell anybody that's the cheat code.
Yeah.
The spiritual part of the cheat code. And I'm
talk, son. Talk.
Those things that you bump your head.
Woo.
I'm fast forward.
Talk.
It's the same example you use in the marketplace. The reason why you get a coach.
Mm-hmm.
A coach, because I'm trying to fast forward.
Talk.
And that's what we learn in ministry. Like you said, Bishop, he's seeing farther than you.
Yeah.
I'm training you.
Yeah.
You wonder why I'm over everything, because you're going to be over the whole church. So you're going to need to know me. You're going to need to know the first ministry. So all those steps will lead you to the process. So definitely heavy.
Can you look back, though, and think about all the sanctions I put on you? And since it was done to me, I said, I'm going to get some. No. But the time came when you walked in one day. And it was revealed, boom, it's time for you to go start at that time, Impact North.
You just kicked us out of the sidewalk.
You gotta go.
I never forget it. That whole moment was life changing. I'm glad you spoke to that, because I remember that service. We timeline, same thing. Bitch, one day was a Wednesday night. We 10 o'clock, like, hey, you know you it. I'm up. Tag, we in there. We had
can you talk about that we have a code where if I'm not there by a certain time,
gotta step up. And
if I get there and you preaching, what do I do?
He's sitting in the audience. And actually, he's sitting in the overflow this time. Same thing we flow. And the was with me. Worked the altar. He just watching. Bitch, you got anything say nothing? I'm thinking service good. We got a good response. Get that data boy when we get there, walk to the car. Said it's time for you and Shana to go. He said that on the sidewalk. I want the information on my dead son. You want the information on your dead son. And I'm saying, man, Shana, we spent the whole night going crazy. And I say this, I didn't even understand. Even my transition from Shreveport, and just the numbers, biblical numbers, 7 years there.
Yeah.
That whole thing was like a process God even showed me. I'm like, why would you do that? Give me here. He said, training. I had to train you to be able to plant what it is we doing here. So I would tell somebody, they would ask me how I would feel. I'm like, man, this is like a second thing. Like God already prepped us for it.
Take two. Yeah.
Just I was able to transition. Overseer Carthon, she did the local, everything was set up for her.
Yes.
Man,
yes.
Just the time and
it was a God thing.
like it was, God hand the whole time, and then everything that you spoke today just disrupted the whole assignment and what we putting out. It was on purpose. And I say this because I didn't get clarity to after the pandemic. It's like we need to be here.
Yeah.
Everybody started moving into like social media, and I'm seeing what God was telling us.
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of gave me clarity on my assignment to do the logistics. And I've told you that many times. People look at my military career and they focus on the drill side. That's what was seen what they had to do in the front. But honestly, my primary job, quartermaster, was logistics. That's my assignment was just to go to school for it. And I was saying that's what God assigned me here in the spirit, to put the logistics together. Because I always used to say this. I've been saying it for day one. My job never to reinvent the wheel, but to put spinners on. That's when I say when you work the first time.
I remember that.
Put spinners on it,
I
but
remember that.
literally just to put the logistics together so we can move and bring my 2 fish and 5 loaves and put it back in the master hand so we can multiply it. That's been my desire and goal.
You've always perfected that though. And you know, there are those who watch you and they see how you advance and how God uses you. But what they don't understand is you authentically have your Father's anointing, but you make it yours. And you don't try to mimic me. You have my DNA in you, but yet you have your own personality and you have your own grace. And if there ever was a time when I saw you doing something I thought wasn't sustainable, like, you know me, I'm saying, you can't keep doing that. Yeah, that looks good right now, but you can't keep doing it. And son, I'm building up to something. Because again, I saw this moment. I never would have thought we'd be sitting here on a podcast, and we've just concluded the launching of DFW to see my daughter Shonda, where God has raised her up to be, how y'all are operating as tag team ministry. I mean, just the dynamic duo. I didn't see God doing it here, but I saw him doing it. And this moment has literally been etched and carved out in eternity from before the foundations of the world, but it couldn't manifest at no other time than this one, because God always meets a need. He doesn't send what you need, he sends who you need. There is a need for the uniqueness of your ministry in this hour and this time, but I'm speaking bigger than man's field. So this is what I was going to say at the altar, and I started moving with haste because of the time, and I forgot to say it actually after I was talking to y'all. But the two of you are getting ready to be the model that I'm going to use for the family of churches that we're yet expanding. You are being officially made the overseer of all of our churches. And you're being set up for the bishopric, where I'm going to consecrate you. And that's going to be what God has given your hands to do, because again, you have the grace to do the war for it. And there's another level of warfare coming that I ain't graced to war in. I'm graced to be the general to make the plays, but you have the grace to do the war. And it is that level of connection and camaraderie that we're going to display, that's going to be a refreshing element for so many people who no longer believe in coverings, no longer believe in sonship, in fatherhood, no longer believe in what some people have coined as the franchise church model. But it's going to give them a second wind and a glimpse of hope to see what God is doing.
Yeah. Y'all see that? That's how the bishops do it, just like that. Y'all see that? He do it just like that. Yes, sir. He put a lot on. But that's it, my dad. Y'all know, amazing everything that he didn't say. Anything you want to speak just to the people as we get ready to wrap up real quickly?
And it may come off like a cheap plug, and if it is, let it be that. Go to Stan's store, and I need you to find Raspberry Mason, because I need you to get the honor code. I've written a whole lot of works, but I'm honored, no pun intended, that God chose me to write the honor code, because we are endeavoring, and I need your help to restore respect and reverence back into the culture. So please be honorable above all things. Thank you for having me, son.
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, all that information will be in the comments, so you get the books, you get the update, you get the things that's going on as it relates to Impact Ministry, Impact Family Churches, and everything that Bishop has sold and poured out. Form of books, manuals. You want to make sure you get it, because you're going to take your ministry, they're going to take your marketplace, media, where it needs to go to the next level. Listen, we want to say thank you for everyone that has sold, given, support. We're only able to do this through your support. So if you like to give, you give by way of Cash App. You can do it in person, of course, if you're here. And then we got Giverify. So Cash App is ICANN365. That is ICANN365, which stands for Impact Community Action Network. And of course, Giverify. You can look for Impact Church, DFW, myself and Lady M. And that's for Impact Church, DFW. Give by those ways. Once again, thank you for everything that you've done. We couldn't do it without you. We say grace and peace. Next time.